Take it, Gandalf. Take it.
No, Frodo.
You must take it.
You cannot offer me this ring.
I'm giving it to you.
Don't tempt me, Frodo.
Have you ever wondered what would happen if Gandalf the Grey had taken the One Ring for himself? Picture this: the wise wizard who guided the Fellowship, who sacrificed himself to save his friends, who always counseled restraint and wisdom. What if he had claimed the ring's terrible power? The answer might shock you. According to Tolkien himself, Gandalf with the ring wouldn't become another Dark Lord like Sauron. He would become something far more terrifying, a benevolent tyrant who would rule Middle-earth with perfect wisdom and absolute control, convinced that he alone knew what was best for everyone. This isn't just idle speculation. Tolkien explored this nightmarish possibility in his own letters and writings, and the implications are more complex and disturbing than you might ever imagine. Before we jump into this theory, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. It helps us keep pushing out more videos like this, exploring the deepest mysteries of Middle-earth. Throughout The Lord of the Rings, we see Gandalf repeatedly refuse the ring when it's offered to him. When Frodo tries to give him the ring in Bag End, Gandalf recoils, as if from a physical blow, saying, "Do not tempt me, for I do not wish to become like the Dark Lord himself. Yet the way of the ring to my heart is by pity. Pity for weakness and the desire of strength to do good." This moment reveals something crucial about Gandalf's character and the nature of the ring's corruption. Unlike characters who might be tempted by power for its own sake, Gandalf would be corrupted through his genuine desire to help and protect Middle-earth. This makes his potential fall even more tragic and, arguably, more dangerous. Tolkien elaborated on this in letter 246, where he wrote that Gandalf would have remained righteous but self-righteous. He would have continued to rule and order things for good and the benefit of his subjects according to his wisdom, which was and would have remained great. To understand what Gandalf with the ring would look like, we need to first understand what Gandalf really is. He's not human, elf, or any mortal being. He's a Maya, one of the Ainur who sang the world into existence. The Istari, or wizards, were specifically chosen by the Valar and sent to Middle-earth in human form to guide and counsel the free peoples against Sauron. However, their power was deliberately limited. They were forbidden from matching Sauron's power with power, or from dominating the wills of men and elves. As Tolkien explained, they came in the form of men, though they were never young and aged only slowly, and they had many powers of mind and hand. Gandalf's true nature becomes evident in rare moments, when he faces the Balrog, when he breaks Saruman's staff, or when he drives off the Nazgul at Weathertop. These glimpses show us that beneath his elderly, wandering wizard exterior lies immense spiritual power that he keeps carefully contained. The One Ring doesn't just grant power, it amplifies and corrupts the existing nature of its bearer. For Gandalf, this amplification would be catastrophic, not because he would become evil in the conventional sense, but because his wisdom and righteousness would become absolute and tyrannical. Tolkien described this potential corruption. He would have remained righteous, but self-righteous. He would have continued to rule and order things for good, and the benefit of his subjects according to his wisdom, which was and would have remained great. The key word here is subjects. Gandalf would no longer see the free people as allies to guide, but as subjects to rule. The ring would convince Gandalf that his wisdom was perfect, his judgment infallible, and that any resistance to his will was simply ignorance or malice that needed to be corrected. This is perhaps more terrifying than Sauron's obvious evil, because it would come wrapped in genuine good intentions and real wisdom. Unlike mortals who might be quickly overwhelmed by the ring's power, Gandalf's corruption would likely be gradual and subtle. Initially, he might use the ring to accomplish genuinely good things, perhaps ending the War of the Ring quickly, healing the wounds of Middle-earth or bringing peace to troubled lands. But with each use, the ring would subtly shift his perspective. He would begin to see free will itself as an obstacle to the greater good. Why should men be allowed to make poor choices when he could guide them to better ones? Why should the elves be permitted to fade when he could preserve them? Why should death and suffering exist when he had the power to prevent them? The ring would also enhance his natural Maya abilities. His foresight would become clearer, his ability to inspire or command would become irresistible, and his physical presence would become overwhelming. He would no longer need to argue or persuade. His very presence would compel obedience. Under Gandalf's rule, Middle-earth would likely become a paradise of sorts, but a prison nonetheless. There would be no war, no suffering, no want. The Shire would bloom eternally, Gondor would never fall, and the elves might never fade. But there would also be no real choice, no growth through struggle, and no genuine freedom. Tolkien hints at this in his description of what Gandalf's rule would look like. The evil issuing from Gandalf, the self-righteous, would be greater and more long-lasting than that of a visibly evil ruler. This is because obvious evil creates obvious resistance, while benevolent tyranny is much harder to recognize and oppose. The peoples of Middle-earth would find themselves living in a world where every decision was made for them by someone who genuinely knew better. There would be no poverty, because Gandalf would redistribute wealth perfectly. No disease, because he would heal everyone. No conflict, because he would resolve all disputes with perfect wisdom. But there would also be no real humanity left. It's crucial to understand that Gandalf with the ring would not become another Sauron. Where Sauron sought domination for its own sake and delighted in others' suffering, Gandalf would seek control out of love and would genuinely want everyone to be happy and safe. This might actually make him more dangerous in the long run. Sauron's evil was obvious and created natural resistance. People could unite against him because his malice was clear. But how do you resist someone who really is making your life better, who really does know what's best for you, and who really does care about your well-being? Tolkien noted that such benevolent tyranny would be the most grievous disaster of all. Because it would be so much harder to recognize as wrong, it would be far more insidious and long-lasting than Sauron's obviously evil rule. The response to Gandalf's rise would likely be complex and divided. Many, especially those suffering under current hardships, might initially welcome his rule. The common folk of Rohan facing orc raids, the people of Gondor threatened by Mordor, the hobbits worried about the growing darkness. They might all see Gandalf's intervention as salvation, but others would recognize the danger immediately. The elves, with their long memories and deep wisdom, would likely be among the first to resist. They understand the value of choice and the danger of power unchecked, even benevolent power. Elrond and Galadriel, who themselves refused the ring, would probably lead resistance efforts. The other Istari would also oppose him. Radagast, though focused on his animals and plants, would likely sense the wrongness of Gandalf's transformation. Even Saruman, corrupt as he was, might oppose Gandalf out of jealousy and recognition that this was not the natural order. Interestingly, some of the most determined resistance might come from the hobbits. Their love of simple pleasures, their distrust of big folk interfering in their affairs, and their natural conservatism would make them surprisingly effective opponents of even benevolent tyranny. Over time, Gandalf's rule would likely lead to the stagnation of Middle-earth. Without struggle, growth would cease. Without choice, wisdom would atrophy. Without the possibility of failure, success would become meaningless. The elves would be preserved, but trapped, unable to fade to the undying lands, but also unable to truly live. Men would be kept safe, but would never develop the strength and wisdom that comes from facing and overcoming challenges. Even the hobbits, for all their simple wisdom, would likely become mere pets in Gandalf's perfect world. Perhaps most tragically, love itself would become hollow. How can there be real love without the choice to not love? How can there be genuine goodness without the possibility of evil? Gandalf's perfect world would preserve the forms of these things while draining away their substance. This scenario reveals one of Tolkien's deepest philosophical concerns, the corrupting nature of power, even when wielded with the best intentions. Having lived through 2 world wars and witnessed the rise of various totalitarian ideologies, Tolkien understood that some of the greatest evils in history were committed by people who genuinely believed they were making the world better. The Catholic influence on Tolkien's thinking is also evident here. The idea that free will is so important that God allows suffering and evil rather than compel goodness reflects traditional Catholic theology about the nature of human dignity and divine love. This brings us to a fascinating question. Could Gandalf have used the ring without being corrupted? The answer, according to Tolkien, is almost certainly no. The ring's power is specifically designed to corrupt, and it would find and exploit any weakness in its bearer. For someone like Boromir, the corruption would come through his desire to protect Gondor. For Galadriel, it would come through her desire to preserve what is beautiful. For Gandalf, it would come through his compassion and wisdom, turning his greatest virtues into the instruments of his fall. The only beings who might resist the ring's corruption are those who have no desire for power at all, like Tom Bombadil, who is completely uninterested in dominion over others. But such beings would also be largely useless as ring bearers, as they would have no desire to actually use its power. If Gandalf had claimed the ring, it would have created a massive crisis among the Valar. They had sent the Istari specifically to avoid the need for another direct intervention in Middle-earth, as their previous interventions had caused tremendous destruction. But a corrupted Maya wielding the Master Ring would pose a threat not just to Middle-earth, but potentially to the entire music of creation. The Valar might be forced to intervene directly, possibly sending other Maiar or even manifesting physically in Middle-earth themselves. Alternatively, they might recall Gandalf to Valinor, stripping him of his physical form and imprisoning him like they did with Melkor. But this would leave Middle-earth without one of its greatest protectors at a crucial time. The Lord of the Rings community has developed numerous theories about this scenario over the years. Some fans speculate that Gandalf might have been able to use the ring's power to heal the fundamental wounds in Arda, the damage caused by Melkor's discord in the music. Others suggest that Gandalf with the ring might have attempted to rewrite the music itself, trying to create a world without the possibility of evil or suffering. This would be the ultimate expression of his corruption, the belief that he could improve upon Eru Ilúvatar's original design. There's also speculation about how other ring bearers might have reacted. Would Galadriel and Elrond have united against him? Would the Nazgûl have transferred their allegiance? Would Sauron himself have sought alliance with his enemies against this new threat? Tolkien's vision of Gandalf's potential corruption has uncomfortable parallels in real history. Many of the 20th century's greatest disasters were caused by leaders who genuinely believed they were creating a better world. The road to tyranny is often paved with good intentions and sincere beliefs about what's best for people. This makes Gandalf's potential fall particularly relevant to modern readers. It's a warning about the danger of concentrating power in the hands of even the wisest and most benevolent individuals, and a reminder that the freedom to make mistakes is an essential part of what makes us human. In the end, the scenario of Gandalf using the One Ring serves as one of Tolkien's most powerful warnings about the nature of power and corruption. It shows us that, The greatest dangers often come not from obvious evil, but from good intentions, unchecked by wisdom and humility. Gandalf's refusal of the ring is one of his most heroic acts, not because it requires great strength, but because it requires profound wisdom and self-knowledge. He understands that his desire to help would become a desire to control, and that his love for Middle-earth would become a cage for its peoples. This is why the ring had to be destroyed rather than used. There was no one pure enough, wise enough, or strong enough to wield it without corruption. Even Gandalf, wisest of the Istari and most devoted to the cause of freedom, would have become a tyrant. Perhaps the most dangerous kind of tyrant, one who rules with love rather than fear. The true victory in The Lord of the Rings isn't just the defeat of Sauron, but the refusal of power by those who could have claimed it. Gandalf's no to the ring is just as important as Frodo's yes to carrying it, because it shows us that sometimes the greatest strength lies in recognizing our own weakness. What do you think? Would Gandalf have been able to resist the ring's corruption, or would he have become the benevolent tyrant Tolkien described? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Middle-earth's darkest possibilities, please consider subscribing to Fellowship of the Lore. That simple click would mean the world to our channel and helps us continue bringing you more explorations of Tolkien's incredible legendarium. We're building a true fellowship of fans who love diving deep into these stories, and we'd love to have you as part of our community.